It's your favorite online historian here, bringing you another exciting video about the dark and dangerous world of organized crime. Today, we're talking about the rise of gang warfare in Sweden. Now, you might be thinking, Sweden? Isn't that the land of meatballs, IKEA, and ABBA? Well, unfortunately, even the most peaceful and prosperous countries have their fair share of criminal activity. And over the past few decades, Sweden has seen a troubling trend of gang violence and turf wars. So grab your favorite cinnamon bun and let's dive into the history of gang warfare in Sweden. Sweden has a long and fascinating history of organized crime, dating all the way back to the 1700s. During this time, Sweden was a major player in the Baltic Sea trade, and smuggling was a common way for people to make a living. But as with any illegal activity, there were always rivalries and tensions between different groups of smugglers. Fast forward to the 20th century, and Sweden's criminal underworld had evolved into more sophisticated and organized groups. The most infamous of these was the criminal organization known as the Swedish Mafia, which was active in the 1950s and 60s. This group was involved in all kinds of illegal activities, from robbery and extortion to drug trafficking and money laundering. As the Swedish Mafia grew in power and influence, they began to face more competition from other criminal groups. One of the most notable of these was the Stockholm Syndicate, which was active in the 1970s and 80s. This group was made up of a diverse mix of criminals, including former members of the Swedish Mafia, and was known for its high-profile heists and violent clashes with the police. In the 1990s, another major player emerged on the Swedish organized crime scene, the Baltic Sea Gang. This group was involved in a wide range of illegal activities, including drug trafficking, money laundering, and extortion. The Baltic Sea Gang was particularly known for its connections to Russian organized crime groups and its use of violence and intimidation to maintain control of its territories. But as with any criminal organization, these groups were eventually brought down by law enforcement. In the 1990s and 2000s, there were several major crackdowns on Swedish organized crime, leading to the arrests and convictions of many high-ranking members. Despite these efforts, organized crime in Sweden has continued to evolve and adapt to the changing landscape. While the Swedish Mafia and other groups may no longer be as active as they once were, there are still many criminal organizations operating in the country, each with its own unique history and methods of operation. One of the most significant developments in recent years has been the emergence of cybercrime as a major focus for Swedish organized crime groups. With the proliferation of the internet and the increasing reliance on technology in our daily lives, criminal organizations have found new and innovative ways to make money through online scams and hacks. While the Swedish Mafia may have been the most well-known criminal group in Sweden's history, it was far from the only one. In the 1980s and 90s, Sweden saw the rise of ethnic gangs, which were often associated with specific immigrant communities. These gangs were involved in a variety of criminal activities, but they were particularly notorious for their involvement in the drug trade. One of the most infamous of these ethnic gangs was the Laserman Gang, which was active in the 1990s and early 2000s. This gang was made up primarily of immigrants from the Middle East and was known for its ruthless tactics and violent conflicts with rival gangs. As previously mentioned, the rise of ethnic gangs in Sweden was a significant development in the country's organized crime scene. These gangs were often associated with specific immigrant communities and were involved in a variety of criminal activities, with drug trafficking being one of the most common. One of the earliest and most notorious of these ethnic gangs was the Black Cobras, which was active in the 1980s and 90s. This gang was made up primarily of immigrants from Africa and was involved in the drug trade, as well as other illegal activities such as robbery and extortion. Another well-known ethnic gang was the Latin Kings, which was active in the 1990s and early 2000s. This gang was made up of immigrants from Latin America and was known for its involvement in the drug trade, as well as its violent conflicts with rival gangs. But it's not just immigrant communities that have been affected by gang violence in Sweden. In recent years, there have been increasing concerns about the rise of far-right extremist groups, which have been linked to gang activity and organized crime. These groups have been involved in a variety of criminal activities, including drug trafficking, weapons smuggling, and hate crimes. The Swedish government has taken steps to address the gang problem, including investing in prevention programs and increasing funding for law enforcement agencies. There have also been efforts to improve the integration of immigrant communities and reduce social exclusion, which can be a major factor in the formation of gangs. Despite these efforts, the issue of gang violence in Sweden remains a complex and multifaceted one. It is not just a problem for immigrant communities, but also affects people of all backgrounds and ages. While it is a challenging issue to address, there is hope that with continued efforts to combat gang activity and improve community relations, Sweden can make progress in reducing the impact of gang violence on its citizens. So where does that leave us today? While Sweden's gang problem is still very much present, it has changed significantly in recent years. Today, the most prominent gangs in Sweden are often connected to specific neighborhoods or housing projects, rather than ethnic groups. These gangs are involved in a variety of criminal activities, from drug trafficking and robbery to extortion and assault. But it's not all bad news. The Swedish government has taken steps to address the gang problem, including investing in prevention programs and increasing funding for law enforcement agencies. There have also been efforts to improve the integration of immigrant communities and reduce social exclusion, which can be a major factor in the formation of gangs. In recent years, the gang problem in Sweden has evolved and changed in significant ways. While ethnic gangs and organized crime groups are still present, the most prominent gangs in Sweden today are often connected to specific neighborhoods or housing projects. These gangs are involved in a variety of criminal activities, from drug trafficking and robbery to extortion and assault. One of the most well-known of these gangs is the Stockholm City Gang, which has been active in the capital city for several decades. This gang is known for its involvement in the drug trade, as well as its violent clashes with rival gangs. But it's not just major cities that are affected by gang activity in Sweden. Smaller towns and rural areas have also seen an increase in gang-related crime in recent years. This has led to concerns about the spread of gang culture and the normalization of violence in these areas. Despite the challenges posed by gang violence, the Swedish government has taken steps to address the issue. In recent years, there has been increased funding for law enforcement agencies, as well as investment in prevention programs aimed at reducing the risk of young people getting involved in gangs. There have also been efforts to improve the integration of immigrant communities and reduce social exclusion, which can be a major factor in the formation of gangs. While there is still much work to be done to combat the gang problem in Sweden, there is hope that these efforts will help to reduce the impact of gang violence on the country's citizens. By addressing the root causes of gang activity and working to improve community relations, Sweden can continue to be a safe and prosperous place for all of its citizens. The rise of gang warfare in Sweden may seem like a disturbing trend. It's important to remember that Sweden is still one of the safest and most prosperous countries in the world. And with efforts being made to address the root causes of gang violence and improve community relations, there is hope that this trend can be reversed. So let's raise a glass of lingonberry juice and toast to a brighter, safer future for Sweden. Thanks for watching.